She hadn't cried in 2 years, hadn't smiled, hadn't even wanted to wake up. Amara Okonkwo was a living ghost, trapped inside grief so deep that her billionaire husband could only watch helplessly as she faded away. But then, on a random street in Lagos, a homeless teenage girl began to sing, and something impossible happened. Amara stopped walking, her hand trembled, and for the first time since burying her daughter, tears poured down her face. Her husband saw it and made a desperate decision that would lead them to a truth so shocking, so completely unbelievable, that when you hear it, you'll question everything you think you know about fate.
Fair African Tales. Subscribe and turn on the bell for new stories.
Marcus stood at the entrance of the master bedroom in his Victoria Island penthouse, a glass of untouched orange juice trembling in his hand. Beyond the doorway, his wife Amara sat motionless in the same chair she'd occupied for the past 6 hours, staring through the floor-to-ceiling window at the Lagos skyline bleeding into twilight. She hadn't blinked in minutes. She hadn't spoken in 3 days. 2 years. It had been 2 years since Sophia, their only daughter, left, and Amara had been dying ever since. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. The woman he'd married, vibrant and full of laughter, had become a ghost occupying her own body, going through the mechanical motions of breathing while her spirit withered somewhere he couldn't reach. Marcus was a tech billionaire. His company, Okonkwo Digital Solutions, he had revolutionized mobile banking across West Africa. He employed 15,000 people. Forbes had called him the African innovator. Government officials sought his counsel. Yet standing in that doorway, watching his wife disappear into herself, he felt more powerless than the day he'd started his first business with nothing but a laptop and a dream. He'd tried everything money could buy. Dr. Adeyemi, Nigeria's most renowned psychiatrist, came to the house twice a week. Amara sat through the sessions in silence, her eyes distant, answering questions with one-word responses when she answered at all. The medications sat untouched in their orange bottles. She refused to take them. Marcus had flown her to Switzerland, thinking a change of scenery might help. She'd stared out different windows there. He'd arranged a retreat in Zanzibar. He hired the best grief counsellors in East Africa. She'd gone through the motions like a programmed robot, nodding when expected, saying, "I'm fine," when anyone asked, then returning to her chair and her silence the moment they left. He'd brought her childhood friends to visit. They'd left in tears, shaken by how thoroughly grief had hollowed her out. He'd tried music therapy, art therapy, meditation retreats. Nothing reached her. Sophia's room remained exactly as she'd left it. Textbooks on the desk, drawings pinned to the walls, her favourite yellow dress hanging in the closet. Amara went in there sometimes, Marcus knew, though she thought he didn't notice. He'd find her in the mornings, curled on Sophia's bed, clutching one of their daughter's stuffed animals, her face dry because she'd cried herself empty during the night. A leukemia had taken Sophia at 16, just 3 months after diagnosis. The disease had moved through her like wildfire, and despite the best oncologists, despite clinical trials and experimental treatments, despite Marcus throwing every resource he had at saving his daughter's life, she'd slipped away on a March morning while sleeping, her hand in her mother's hand. Amara hadn't been the same since. How could she be? But this wasn't just grief. Marcus understood grief, felt it himself every time he passed Sophia's photograph in the hallway. This was something deeper, darker. Clinical depression, Dr. Adeyemi called it. Complicated grief disorder. Words that meant his wife was drowning, and he didn't know how to pull her back to shore. "Mr. Marcus," Dr. Adeyemi's voice echoed in his memory from their last session just that afternoon. "I'm going to be direct with you. Amara is deteriorating. She's barely eating. She's not sleeping properly. She's shown signs of passive suicidal ideation, not actively planning to harm herself, but expressing that she wouldn't mind if she simply didn't wake up one morning." The words had hit Marcus like physical blows. "We need to try something different," the doctor had continued. "Small interventions, basic ones. I want you to take her outside every day, even if she resists. Fresh air, sunlight, movement. 20 minutes minimum. The body affects the mind, and right now, her body is as stagnant as her emotional state. Sometimes the smallest actions create the largest shifts." So here Marcus stood, steeling himself for the battle he knew was coming. Amara would resist. She always did. But he'd made a promise to Sophia in those final hours that he'd take care of her mother no matter what. And he intended to keep it, even if Amara hated him for it. "Amara, my love." He approached her chair, setting the juice on the side table. "We're going for a walk." She didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge he'd spoken. "The doctor says it's important. Just 20 minutes. We'll stay close to home." Nothing. Her reflection in the window might as well have been painted there. Marcus knelt beside her chair, taking her cold hand in his. "Please, for me, for Sophia." At their daughter's name, something flickered in Amara's eyes. Pain so sharp it made Marcus's chest ache. But she stood, mechanically, a puppet responding to invisible strings. Victory felt hollow, but he'd take it, and he helped her into a coat. She'd lost so much weight it hung off her frame, and guided her to the elevator. Their security detail, Emeka and Chidi, maintained a discreet distance as they exited the building into the December evening. Lagos in December carried a different quality than the rest of the year. The harmattan winds from the Sahara brought a dry coolness that felt almost foreign to the typically humid city. Dust hazed the sky, turning the setting sun into a muted orange disk. Christmas decorations adorned the upscale shops of Victoria Island, their cheerfulness a stark contrast to the weight Marcus carried in his chest. Amara walked beside him like a sleepwalker, her hand limp in his. They moved through the streets in silence, past restaurants where people laughed over pepper soup and palm wine, past boutiques where women examined expensive fabrics for holiday parties, past all the life that continued despite their grief, indifferent to their pain. Marcus was planning their route back home when he heard it. A voice, a female voice, young and achingly pure, rising above the traffic noise and city chaos like something from another world entirely. It stopped him mid-step, the beauty of it so unexpected that for a moment he forgot where he was. The voice was singing Hallelujah, not the joyful church version, but Leonard Cohen's haunting original, each note carrying the weight of 1,000 broken hearts put back together and broken again. And beside him, Amara had stopped walking. Marcus turned to look at his wife and felt his breath catch. She was crying, actually crying, tears streaming down her face. Her chest hitching with sobs, her hand gripping his so tightly it hurt. And she was looking, truly looking, at something beyond that window she'd been staring through for 2 years. She was present. The voice drew them forward like a beacon. They rounded a corner and found the source. A girl, couldn't be more than 16 or 17, sitting on a piece of cardboard near a pedestrian bridge. She was thin, her clothes worn but clean, her hair pulled back in a simple style. A battered guitar rested across her lap, and beside her sat an open guitar case with a pathetic scattering of coins that spoke to how long she'd been ignored by the rushing commuters. But her voice, God, her voice was transcendent. She sang with her eyes closed, lost in the music, and Marcus realized why the song had stopped him so completely. Aunt Sophia used to sing Hallelujah. It had been her favorite. She'd sing it while studying, while cooking with her mother, while doing absolutely anything. The house had been full of her voice, and then suddenly, silence. Amara was trembling beside him, tears flowing freely now, and Marcus realized this was the first genuine emotion he'd seen from her in months. Not the hollow blankness, not the mechanical responses. This was raw, real feeling breaking through the numbness. The girl finished her song, opened her eyes, and seemed startled to find anyone actually paying attention. Her gaze landed on Amara's tear-stained face, and something shifted in her expression. Recognition, perhaps, of one broken soul seeing another. "That was beautiful," Marcus said, his voice rough. "What's your name?" The girl studied him warily, and the survival instinct of someone who'd learned that strangers rarely meant well. "Nana!" Again! Amara's voice barely a whisper, but the first word she'd spoken in days. "Please, sing it again." Nana's eyes widened, but something in Amara's desperate plea must have moved her, because she nodded and began the song anew. Marcus watched his wife listen, truly listen, and an idea began forming in his mind. An impossible, perhaps foolish idea. But after 2 years of watching Amara slip away, after trying everything conventional medicine and wealth could provide, what did he have to lose? When Nana finished the second time, Marcus approached carefully, pulling out his wallet. The girl tensed, and he understood why. A wealthy man approaching a homeless teenager rarely led anywhere good. He kept his distance, respectful. "Nana, I have an unusual proposition for you." He removed a business card and several crisp bills. "I'd like to hire you to come sing for my wife a few times a week. I'll pay you very well." Nana stared at the money, then at him, suspicion warring with desperation in her eyes. "Sing? That's all?" "That's all, I promise you. No tricks, no strings, just your voice." He gestured to Amara, who was watching the exchange with more alertness than he'd seen in months. "Music reaches her in ways nothing else does. I can see that. And you—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You need help. Let me help you and you'll be helping us." "How do I know you're not some creep?" Direct, smart. This girl had learned to protect herself. "You don't. But here's my card. You can look me up online. Marcus, Okonkwo Digital Solutions. I'm in the news quite a bit. And here's my offer. Come to this address." He wrote it on the back of the card. "Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Security will be expecting you. You sing for 1 hour. I pay you 50,000 naira. If you're uncomfortable at any point, you leave, no questions asked, and you keep the money." 50,000 naira was more money than Nana had probably seen in months. He could see the war playing out on her face, the street-smart teenager who'd learned to trust no one versus the desperate child who was cold and hungry and tired of being alone. "Why?" she asked finally. Marcus looked at Amara, who was staring at Nana with an intensity that broke his heart. "Because my wife hasn't cried in 2 years. She hasn't felt anything in 2 years, and your voice made her feel something. That's worth everything to me." The truth hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Nana searched his face, then Amara's, and whatever she saw there must have convinced her, because she took the card and the money. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m., 1 hour. She tucked the bills into her pocket carefully, and I'm bringing pepper spray. Despite everything, Marcus almost smiled. Smart girl. As they walked away, Amara turned back once to look at Nana, who was packing up her guitar. Something had shifted in his wife's posture. She stood a little straighter, her eyes a little clearer. That night, for the first time in months, Amara spoke at dinner. Her voice, she said quietly, pushing food around her plate. It reminded me of Sophia. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. I know. Do you think she'll come tomorrow? I don't know. I hope so. Amara looked at him then, really looked at him, and squeezed his hand. Thank you, for trying, for not giving up. Never, he promised. I will never give up on you. But even as hope flickered in his chest for the first time in forever, Marcus had no idea that this chance encounter was anything but chance. He didn't know that Nana carried within her a connection to Sophia so profound, so impossible, that when the truth finally emerged, it would shatter everything they thought they knew about loss, about legacy, about the mysterious ways that love persists even after death. 3 days later, Nana stood at the gates of the Okonkwo estate, staring up at wealth she'd only ever seen in movies. The security guard, Emeka, he checked his list and waved her through with a kind smile, and she walked up a driveway that probably cost more than most people's houses. Marcus met her at the door personally, and she saw relief flash across his face. He'd been worried she wouldn't come. He led her through a house that felt more like a museum than a home, all marble and art and floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the Lagos Lagoon. And there was Amara, sitting in a sunlit conservatory filled with plants, looking small and fragile in an expensive chair. Nana came, Marcus said gently, and Amara's face lit up with something that might have been joy. Nana pulled out her guitar, still wary, still ready to bolt if anything felt wrong, but as she began to sing, she watched something extraordinary happen. Amara closed her eyes and breathed, really breathed, in her whole body seeming to unclench for the first time. By the end of that first hour, Nana had earned her 50,000 naira. But more than that, she'd earned something she'd stopped believing existed. A place where someone wanted her, even if just for her voice. Will you come back? Amara asked as Nana was leaving, and there was such vulnerability in the question that Nana found herself nodding before she'd even decided. Friday, same time? Yes, please. So began a routine that would change all their lives in ways none of them could possibly imagine, because sometimes the person you think you're saving is actually the one saving you. And sometimes the connections that seem like coincidence are actually miracles wearing disguise. But here's what I want you to think about. If you could hear the voice of someone who carried a piece of your lost loved one inside them, would you want to know? Or would the truth be too heavy to bear? 3 weeks had passed since that first session, and the change in Amara was undeniable. She was eating again, not much, but enough that Marcus stopped lying awake at night terrified she'd simply fade away. She showered on the days Nana came. She chose her clothes with care for the first time in 2 years. Small victories, but to Marcus, they felt like resurrections. Nana arrived every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. sharp, her guitar case slung over her shoulder, her wariness gradually softening into something that looked almost like belonging. Marcus paid her generously, more than fairly. And he'd noticed she'd gained weight, her cheeks filling out, her eyes losing that haunted, hunted look that street life carved into young faces. But something else was happening too, something Marcus hadn't anticipated. After the songs, Amara started talking. Just small things at first, comments about the music, questions about where Nana learned to play. But then, on the fourth week, as Nana was packing up her guitar, Amara said something that changed everything. "Stay for tea." Nana froze, caught off guard. This wasn't part of their arrangement. She glanced at Marcus, who looked equally surprised, but nodded encouragingly. Okay, yes, thank you." They sat in the conservatory, afternoon light filtering through the glass, and for the first time, they talked, really talked, not employer to employee, not charity case to benefactor, but two human beings sharing space and stories. "How long have you been on your own?" Amara asked, her voice gentle. Nana stirred sugar into her tea, considering how much truth to share. But something about Amara's eyes, the depth of pain there, the recognition of one wounded soul seeing another, made her decide on honesty. "Since I turned 16, aged out of the foster system. I was in my last placement with a family in Surulere, but when I turned 16, they couldn't keep me anymore. Government funding stopped." She said it matter-of-factly, but Marcus saw Amara's hand tighten around her cup. "No one helped you transition, find housing, a job." Nana laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The system doesn't work like that here, Ma. You turn 16, you're an adult. Figure it out." And I had a friend who let me sleep on her floor for a few months, but her parents couldn't handle an extra mouth to feed. So I left, found some abandoned buildings, learned which streets were safer, which ones to avoid after dark. "God," Amara whispered, "you were just a child." "Still am, technically. I'm 16 and a half now." Nana took a sip of tea. Real tea, not the cheap stuff she sometimes splurged on when she had money. "But you grow up fast when you have to." Marcus watched his wife lean forward, engaged in a way he hadn't seen since Sophia's death. "Where did you learn to sing like that? It's extraordinary." For the first time, Nana smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. "My first foster mother, when I was little, she sang in the church choir. She used to say I had a gift, that I should develop it. She died when I was 8, and I got moved to another home, but I never stopped singing. It's the one thing that's always been mine, you know? The one thing no one could take away." Amara's eyes filled with tears, and she reached across the table to take Nana's hand. The gesture was so unexpected that Nana almost pulled away, but she didn't. She let this grieving woman hold her hand, and something unspoken passed between them. Understanding, connection, the beginning of something neither could name. "Our daughter used to sing," Amara said softly. "She had your passion for it. She'd sing constantly, drove us crazy sometimes." A watery laugh. "I'd give anything to hear her voice again." And there it was, the ghost that haunted this house, finally acknowledged. "What happened to her?" Nana asked carefully. Marcus answered when Amara couldn't. "Leukemia, 2 years ago. She was 16 when she gave up." 16, the same age Nana was now. The parallel hung in the air, unspoken but heavy with meaning. The conversation shifted after that, lighter topics, safer ground. But when Nana left that evening, she carried with her more than money. She carried the knowledge that she'd been seen, truly seen, as more than just a street kid with a good voice. And Amara, for the first time since Sophia's death, felt something other than grief. She felt purpose. Over the following weeks, their sessions evolved. Nana would sing, yes, but afterward they'd talk. Sometimes Marcus joined them, sometimes he left them alone, sensing they needed privacy for the things they shared. Nana told them about foster homes that ranged from indifferent to cruel, and about teachers who'd encouraged her music, about the bone-deep loneliness of never having a place that felt like home. And Amara opened up too, sharing memories of Sophia, her laugh, her stubbornness, her dreams of becoming a doctor. She showed Nana photographs, and Nana saw a girl who looked nothing like her, but somehow felt familiar in ways she couldn't explain. It was during one of these conversations, 6 weeks into their arrangement, that the first domino fell. "When's your birthday, Nana?" Amara asked casually, flipping through a photo album. "March 15th, Nana replied, not thinking much of it. The photo album slipped from Amara's hands, hitting the floor with a sharp crack. Marcus, who'd been working on his laptop in the corner, looked up sharply. "Amara?" But Amara was staring at Nana like she'd seen a ghost, in her face drained of colour, her breathing shallow. That's the day Sophia died, March 15th. The silence that followed felt alive, pulsing with significance none of them fully understood yet. Nana's hand went to her chest instinctively, to the scar there that marked where they'd harvested bone marrow for her transplant. "That's the day I got my transplant, the day someone's donation saved my life." Time seemed to stop. Marcus set down his laptop slowly, his brilliant mind already racing ahead, making connections, calculating probabilities. Amara just stared, her lips moving soundlessly. "You had a transplant." Marcus's voice was carefully controlled. "What kind?" "Bone marrow. I had acute lymphoblastic leukemia when I was 14. I was dying. The doctors said I had maybe 2 months without a transplant. And then they found a match, anonymous donor. The family requested privacy, so I never knew who they were. Just that someone gave me their bone marrow and it saved my life." Now, I need you to understand something crucial here. The odds of what was unfolding were astronomical. In a country of over 200 million people, in a city of over 20 million, what were the chances that this homeless girl singing on the street would be the recipient of their daughter's bone marrow? But Amara's hands were shaking as she reached for Nana. "What hospital? When exactly?" "Lagos University Teaching Hospital, March 15th, 2023. I remember because it was my 14th birthday. Best birthday present I ever got. Life." Marcus had his phone out now, pulling up records he'd kept from Sophia's final days. The donation papers. On the consent forms. He'd saved everything, unable to let go of any piece of his daughter's existence. "LUTH, March 15th, 2023. His voice cracked. "Sophia gave up at LUTH that morning. We agreed to donate her organs, her bone marrow, anything that could help someone else. The doctor said a teenage girl with leukemia was a match. They said it would save her life." The words hung in the air like a prayer, like an accusation, like a miracle too impossible to believe. Nana's face went through a series of emotions, shock, disbelief, something that might have been fear. "You're saying you think your daughter, that Sophia, saved your life," Amara whispered. "Oh my God, you're alive because of Sophia." The room felt too small suddenly, the air too thin. Nana stood abruptly, her chair scraping back. "I need to go. I need to. If this is too much." "Wait," Marcus started, but Nana was already grabbing her guitar, her movements jerky with panic. "I'm sorry. I need to think. This can't be real. The odds are impossible." She fled, and Marcus had to physically hold Amara back from following. They stood in the conservatory as the sun set, holding each other, trembling with the magnitude of what they'd just discovered. Or thought they'd discovered. Because they weren't certain yet. Not completely. That night, Marcus made calls. He used every connection he had, pulled strings that probably shouldn't be pulled, accessed records that required special permissions. And by morning, he had confirmation. The donor number matched, the hospital matched, the date matched, the tissue type matched. Nana had received Sophia's bone marrow. But knowing and proving were different things, and more importantly, sharing this truth with Nana required delicacy they weren't sure they possessed. Because how do you tell a girl who's been abandoned by everyone that she carries the life force of your dead daughter? How do you make sure she understands she's not a replacement, not a ghost made flesh, but her own person who happens to be connected to you through an impossible twist of fate? Dr. Adiemi helped them navigate it. Tell her the truth, he advised when they called him in a panic, but make it clear what this does and doesn't mean. She needs to know she's valued for herself, not just as a living piece of Sophia. 3 days passed before Nana returned. 3 agonizing days where Amara spiraled between hope and fear, where Marcus spent sleepless nights wondering if they'd scared away the one thing that had brought light back into his wife's eyes. But on the 4th day, Nana knocked on their door. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept either. Is it true? Do you have proof? Marcus showed her everything, the records, the donor numbers, the hospital confirmations. They sat at the dining table, papers spread between them like evidence at a trial, and Nana read through each one with shaking hands. "Your daughter saved my life," she finally said, her voice breaking. "I'm alive because she died." "No," Amara said fiercely, reaching across to grab Nana's hands. "You're alive because Sophia chose to give life even in death. There's no guilt in that, no debt. This is a gift, not a burden." But Nana was crying now, huge, racking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and long buried. "I don't know how to feel. I don't know what this means. I don't know if I can be what you need me to be." "We don't need you to be anything except yourself," Marcus said gently. "This connection, it's extraordinary, yes, impossible, yes, but it doesn't obligate you to anything. You owe us nothing." But here's the question that none of them could answer that day. When grief and gratitude collide, when the impossible becomes real, how do you build something authentic without being crushed by the weight of what it represents? They were about to find out, because what came next would test all of them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Nana didn't come back for a week after the revelation, and in that silence, Shuamara discovered something terrifying. She'd opened her heart again, and now it could break all over. Every day without Nana felt like another loss, another confirmation that nothing good could last, that hope was just grief waiting to happen. But Marcus held her through it, reminding her that Nana needed time, that processing something this massive couldn't be rushed. When Nana finally returned, she didn't bring her guitar. She stood at the door, hands in her pockets, looking younger than her 16 years. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I've never had a family. I don't know the rules." Amara smiled through tears. "Neither do we. We lost ours. So maybe we figure it out together." And that's exactly what they did. Not overnight, not easily, but slowly, carefully. Be like people learning to walk again after a devastating injury. Marcus arranged for Nana to move into one of the guest rooms, her own space, her own sanctuary, decorated however she wanted. Not Sophia's room, never Sophia's room. That was sacred ground. This was Nana's territory, and she filled it with her own posters, her own books, her own identity, separate from the ghost that connected them. The adjustment was messy. Nana had survival instincts that didn't shut off just because she had a roof over her head. She hoarded food in her room, unable to trust that meals would keep coming. She woke at 3 a.m., panicked, disoriented, having dreamed she was back on the streets. She flinched at sudden movements, locked doors compulsively, kept a bag packed by her bed in case she needed to run. And Amara had her own struggles. Some mornings, and grief still pinned her to the bed. Some days, she'd see Nana laugh a certain way or tilt her head just so, and the reminder that this wasn't Sophia would hit so hard she'd have to leave the room to cry. The depression didn't vanish, it never would, but she'd learned to manage it with therapy she finally accepted, medication she finally took, and the purpose Nana's presence had restored. Dr. Adeyemi continued seeing them all, individually and together, helping them navigate the complex terrain of their unconventional family. This isn't replacement, he reminded them constantly. This is transformation. Grief doesn't end, it changes shape. Marcus threw himself into action the way he always did when facing challenges. He established the Sophia Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to helping aged-out foster youth with housing, education, my healthcare, and job training. Every child who'd fallen through the system's cracks the way Nana had, they became his mission. But more importantly, he learned to be present. Not just a provider, not just a problem solver, but a father figure who showed up for school enrollment meetings, who learned to cook Nana's favourite meals, who sat with her during health checkups, even though hospitals made him relive Sophia's death. 3 months in, Nana had her routine oncology screening. The transplant meant lifelong monitoring for potential complications. The blood work showed irregularities. Nothing definitive, but enough that the doctors ordered more tests. The week waiting for results was hell. Amara spiraled, convinced she was about to lose another daughter. Nana withdrew, preparing herself for abandonment if she became too much trouble. Marcus moved through it all in crisis management mode, making calls, arranging for the best specialists, holding everything together while fracturing inside. When the results finally came back clear, just post-viral inflammation, nothing serious, they all collapsed together in the doctor's office, crying with relief. And in that moment, something crystallized. They'd survived their first crisis as a family. They'd held on to each other instead of falling apart. "I want this to be official," Amara said that night at dinner. "I want us to be a real family. Would you consider letting us foster you? And eventually, when you're ready, adopt you?" Nana's fork clattered to her plate. "You want to adopt me?" "Only if you want it too," Marcus added quickly. "No pressure. You're welcome here regardless. But yes, we'd be honoured if you'd let us be your family legally, not just in our hearts." Nana looked between them, these two people who'd seen her at her lowest and chosen to lift her up anyway. "I'd like that. I'd really like that." The legal process took months, home studies, court dates, mountains of paperwork. But 1 year and 2 days after Nana first sang on that bridge, the judge signed the final adoption papers. Nana Okonkwo officially existed. She kept her original first name. It was hers, her identity, her history. But taking the Okonkwo name meant she belonged somewhere, to someone, finally. The celebration was small, just them and a few close friends. But later, when the guests had gone, Nana found Amara in Sophia's room, something she rarely did. "I wanted to tell her thank you," Amara explained, touching Sophia's yellow dress. "For giving us you, for giving us a reason to keep living." Do you think she'd be okay with this, with me being here? Amara turned, pulling Nana into a fierce hug. I think she'd love knowing that her gift didn't just save your life, it saved ours too. I think she'd love your music, your strength, your terrible jokes. And I think she'd be proud that her legacy is love, not just loss. 6 months later, Nana stood backstage at the Sophia Foundation's first annual fundraiser, her hands shaking as she prepared for her first public performance since the streets. This was different from singing for spare change. This was stepping into her future, claiming her identity as an artist, not a survivor. Marcus squeezed her shoulder. You've got this. Just remember, you're not performing for them. You're performing for you. She walked onto that stage, guitar in hand, and the spotlight hit her face. In the audience, Amara sat front row, tears already streaming. Around them were donors, foster youth the foundation had helped, journalists covering the event. Nana adjusted the microphone, her voice steady despite her nerves. This song is dedicated to Sophia Okonkwo, who I never met, but who gave me the greatest gift, life, and to her parents who taught me that family isn't just blood, it's choice, it's showing up, it's loving someone even when it's hard. She played Hallelujah, but her own arrangement now, evolved, mature, uniquely hers. And as she sang, she watched Amara in the audience, saw Marcus slip his hand into his wife's, saw them smile through tears. The foundation grew, helping hundreds of youth find paths forward. Amara became a peer counselor for parents who'd lost children, turning her grief into guidance for others drowning in the same darkness. And Nana, she got accepted to the Muson School of Music on full scholarship, her talent finally getting the training it deserved. 1 year later, Amara stood at a national organ donor registry event, Nana beside her, telling their story to a packed auditorium. Grief doesn't end, Amara told the crowd, but it can transform. When we lost Sophia, I thought my life was over. I wanted it to be over. But her final gift, donating her bone marrow, didn't just save Nana's life. It saved mine too. It gave me a reason to wake up, to hope, to love again. She paused, looking at Nana with pride. This isn't a fairy tale. Some days are still hard. I still miss Sophia with an ache that never fully goes away. But I've learned that you can hold grief and joy simultaneously. You can honor who you've lost while embracing who remains. The audience rose in standing ovation, but Amara wasn't finished. If Sophia's story moves you, please consider registering as an organ donor. One person's final gift can ripple outward in ways we can't imagine. It saved Nana. It saved me. It saved our family. That's the power of giving life, even in death. Afterward, dozens of people lined up to register as donors. Sophia's legacy rippling outward, touching strangers, creating possibilities for miracles they'd never see but would absolutely change lives. That evening, the three of them sat in their conservatory, the same place where Nana first sang for Amara, where conversations had built bridges between broken hearts. Sophia's photograph sat on the side table, a present but no longer a shrine to paralysis. She'd be proud of you, Marcus told Nana, who was practicing a new composition for school. She'd be proud of all of us, Amara corrected, for choosing love over despair, for building something beautiful from something broken. Nana set down her guitar, looking at the two people who'd become her parents in every way that mattered. Thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, for teaching me that I deserve good things. Always, they said together. And in that moment, in that room filled with plants and light, and the echoes of songs both old and new, they were proof that sometimes the most impossible coincidences are actually the universe's way of writing happy endings for broken hearts willing to heal. Now I have a question for you, and I need you to really think about this. If you could give one gift that would outlive you, what would it be? Drop your answer in the comments, and if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button because we're sharing more stories that prove love is stronger than loss, hope is braver than despair, and family is built not just through blood, but through choice. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today, because just like Nana's voice reached Amara on that bridge, your share might reach someone who desperately needs hope. I'll see you in the next story.